SYS presents Adventures in Online Education.
Hello, friends. You're listening to SYS Presents Adventures in Online Education. I'm your host, Natalie Conway. Thanks for being here. If you're new to the podcast, first off, welcome. I am so glad that you're here. Now, you're going to want to head over to aoepodcast.org and enter your info at the bottom of the page to start receiving the AOE newsletter. It's a little piece of positivity from me to you every week. Returning listeners, I appreciate you so much. If you like AOE, you're going to love our new daily podcast, This Day in Education. You'll learn about important people, events, and inventions that have shaped education in the U.S. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or at thisdayined.org. On to today's episode. My guest today is Allison Galvin, Executive Director for Oregon Charter Academy, otherwise known as ORCA, a statewide online charter school in Oregon. Oregon Charter was the first online public charter established in the state of Oregon and has been one of, if not the largest online school in the state. Allison leads the entire school and oversees management of all aspects of the school's operations. It is a huge job. She herself has been in education since 2002. Allison began her work in schools as a math teacher and then an instructional coach in the Salem-Keizer School District before transitioning to the role of school administrator with ORCA. She resides in Salem, Oregon with her husband and daughter. I think you're going to like getting to meet Allison today and hear her thoughts on leading through challenging times and managing change. So, you ready? Let's learn something new. Allison Galvin, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I am very excited for our audience to get to know you, to get to know the work you do and the work that your school is doing in online education. But before we get into all of that, how did you yourself get into the field of education? What drew you here?
I got to tell you, that question you get when you're a little kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? Mine was always either a teacher or a lawyer. And my mom one day asked me, well, why a teacher and why a lawyer? And I said, well, I really want to be a teacher, but lawyers probably make more money. And she said, well, then you should probably be a teacher. And it's been set ever since then. Every year in school, third grade, fourth grade, it was like, oh, I want to be a third grade teacher. Oh, now I want to be a fourth grade teacher. And I ended up being a high school math teacher. So there you go. Always knew it.
That's so fun. I did too. When I was little, I would play school. Did you have your little Tykes chalkboard set up at home and teach your animals things?
Yeah. So I have older brothers, and so I'd rope them into playing with me.
I love it. I love that. That is so cool. A teacher at heart, for sure.
Mhm.
Some listeners will be familiar with the idea and the title of an executive director because that is your role now in education. Others may not have heard of that or know what that is. Can you explain a little bit about what you are doing now in education and what you love about that role and maybe what some of the challenges are?
Well, I got to tell you, nothing beats teaching. And so I do miss my days as a classroom teacher significantly. But I became a school administrator just because our goal is to reach kids. And how can we reach kids? And I recognized, as an administrator, I'd have the opportunity to reach potentially even more kids. And that's what drew me into administration. As far as being an executive director, I think life has a way of taking twists and turns, and somehow you end up in the seat you're in. And I've worked, certainly hard in my life, but it's also been so lucky to be surrounded by so many amazing educators in my life. So I got to be the one in the seat, but I got to tell you, I envy the days of being a high school math teacher and, being an instructional coach or an athletic coach, all of those things. Specifically as an executive director, really in that role, you truly are supporting the everyday operations of the school. But there's also, with every school, there's a business side. We still have to pay our bills, pay our people, long-term plan. And, there's the HR stuff, the contracts and all the various contractors. And how are you going to, meet all of your special populations needs? So you get to dabble in almost everything in the world of education and even the business side. What I really love doing is I really love working with our teachers, hearing where their challenges are and being able to say, all right, well, let's undo that challenge. Let's make it right. And how can we better meet kids' learning needs because we made that right? So being able to really dig in and be able to say, okay, yes, we can do that is pretty awesome. The other thing I really love doing is that long-term planning. I'm a firm believer if we're not striving to grow, we go stagnant, and that just leads to falling backwards. I'm not a big fan of stagnant. So always thinking about, okay, what's the next step? How can we do this better? How can we grow a program to meet needs that weren't there maybe 10 years ago? All of those things. I love it.
That's being able to think really globally and big picture about a school, and not just in the sense of, a brick and mortar principal has certain responsibilities, but then you have people at a district level too who take on a lot of roles and responsibilities. And
Mhm.
I've seen in the online world that executive directors, heads of school, those kinds of roles, you really have a district level responsibility for a lot of what you're doing. So you really do have to be able to plan ahead and have a vision and have an idea of what you want 5 or 10 years down the road. That must be really challenging while also managing the people side of things.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely is more comparable to like that district level superintendent where you do have your board meetings and you got to plan for those every month and help facilitate those. It's the board's meeting, but be a resource for the board and preparing for those. And yeah, all those staffing and financial and, that 5-year financial budget forecast, what's that look like? And yeah, so you're right. It's different than a building principal, but, there's a need for both roles, certainly.
Absolutely. Yeah. And speaking of having that vision and not wanting to be stagnant and always pushing forward, your school made a really bold step recently and went away from the management company you'd worked with since the inception of the school. That must have been a really tough decision. Can you speak to why you took that step?
Yeah, so I would say, when we were founded, we were the original virtual public charter school in the state of Oregon. And we were founded in 2005. We still have a couple of founding board members on our board. And at that time, you think about 2005 and the technology we had in 2005. And if you think about it, I had my Motorola flip phone back then,
Heck yeah. Yes.
iPhones weren't a thing. Even, oh gosh, the smartphones weren't really around yet. And so at that time, being new to the world of education, being the first virtual public charter school in Oregon, I think it absolutely did make sense to have that management company that had a little more experience with it and said, hey, let us support these operations so you all can work on teaching and learning. And they provided, it was a very comprehensive management as far as HR, the finances, operations, facilities, but even down to teaching and learning and curriculum and platform. And we just experienced over time, that absolutely made sense in 2005. But as we kept moving along, technology kept improving. I want to say increasing, but truly improving, I would say.
Both, maybe, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's really infiltrated a lot of our lives. So
absolutely. And that access to that technology improved over time as well. And we noticed that what made sense in 2005 didn't necessarily make sense moving forward. And we did let that contract expire starting in that 2020-21 school year is when we became Oregon Charter Academy running independently. So, there were 15 years where we worked under that contract and certainly a lot of benefit, but it was time. We can run this school on our own. We can be more dynamic for our students and more responsive to our teachers' needs and be able to do that as we should grow as our society and our world around us and technology grows. We need to grow with it and not be behind. So that was a big step for us. Certainly, it was really significant. Throw in their pandemic and wildfires, and our authorizing district was hit hard by the wildfires. We had them on our own property, even, and so we did that all at the same time as transitioning away from this management company we had worked with for 15 years. So it was a heavy lift, to say the least, but truly just so empowering for our families and our staff, and it's been awesome.
that is great to hear. That empowerment, I think, is really important. And you make such a good point because for many areas of our lives, what made sense in 2005 or what we thought made sense in 2005 doesn't make sense now. And we've learned just so much more and grown so exponentially, and technology certainly has grown exponentially since then. So it's really cool to hear that growth story of, being new and needing that support, and then over time realizing we've got this. Let's just take it and run with it. And your teachers are amazing for doing that.
I don't know, Natalie. I was pretty good at texting on my Razor phone, though. I knew exactly how many times to
Right.
hit each number to get to my letter. I don't know.
For those who maybe don't remember this, yeah, you used to have to just use the keypad to
Yeah.
type the letters,
22555 3. That's
right?
great.
Hello. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very challenging times.
Mhm.
Well, managing change is a big part of what a leader does in a school,
Mhm.
at the school level, at the district level. And they say that managing change is one of the most difficult things to do. So, inevitably, not everyone will be on board at the same time or really have the same understanding of the why behind a change or exactly the what. So, there can be lots of anxiety around the unknown, and generally people don't always love being asked to do things maybe that they've never done before, right? Especially, I'm
So true.
imagining your teachers who had been with you since the start or near the beginning of the school. So how has that transition been for you and for the staff?
Yeah, again, try doing that change management in the middle of COVID with these wildfires raging throughout our state. It was a lot for everyone all at one time, definitely. I'd say change is not easy for a lot of people, and that's true, but when we can say, here's the feedback you've given us. We want to be responsive to that. Here's the solution to responding to that. And when people truly listen and they let their wall down and truly listen to the why, I think it's a lot easier to manage, certainly. I will tell you, as we've gone from previously just a really static canned curriculum where you truly started on day one of the school year and it does this exactly what it's supposed to do every day for the next 180 school days, regardless of the learning needs, to we respond and adjust and adapt, and standards align, and we're getting through all those standards absolutely how we should be, but being able to do it in a more dynamic way. It does take some support of staff, as you're well aware of, and that shift in mindset from here's what I've done for some of them 15 years, as you said, and here's what we're doing now. It is a lot at first, but once you can build those routines and be a support, and there were days, I tell you, there were days that I felt more like a counselor and a shoulder than, a school leader, and that's okay. That's part of it too. And the most important thing is that we do need to do this together. And I think that value in community really helped our goal to transition to becoming independent and changing how we educate kids.
Absolutely. I really like hearing you talk about being responsive and taking feedback from students, taking feedback from teachers, from your stakeholders, and acting on that and really explaining the why. I always think it's so powerful when people understand the why of any change or
Mhm.
any new initiative or something. That's always how you hook them in and help them understand the importance of it. Do you have advice for other school leaders who might be considering doing something similar or just who are managing change, especially in the time of continued COVID, as I've been calling it, and
Yeah.
all the craziness?
Well, definitely be intentional. Know your long-term game plan and be willing to adjust as you go. Again, if we're not responding to our students and our staff, we're not doing justice by our school and so in our community. So, yeah, I would say being intentional, being just really thoughtful and understanding. I think that's a really big key, is that empathy, if you will, that understanding that change is hard for people. And so when you change their routines, even, gosh, I think about it, when I was teaching, I liked my stapler in a certain spot and my roll of tape in a certain spot, which seems so silly. And when it got shifted to the other side of my desk, I'd be like, oh, that's not where it goes. So
Yes.
just being empathetic that this is a big change. You just are taking my stapler and not just moving it to the other corner of my desk, but you're like totally putting it down the hall in somebody else's classroom and I still need to go use it. So just that intentional communication. And for me, a huge part of communication is listening. That's like one of the most critical forms of communication. And then that empathy of, okay, we got this. Some are going to sprint right away, and some are going to still need to keep taking baby steps. And wherever you are on that path, let's do it together.
I like that a lot. SYS is an online management company that takes a different approach. We partner with schools to manage solutions. Whether you are a district adding an online option for students or an online school looking to go in a new direction, SYS Education can help make it exactly what you need it to be, with high-quality products at a fraction of the cost that schools pay to other companies. We are not just an educational consulting company, we are online educators ourselves, and a tech team like no other. Let us help you bring your online school experience to the next level. Find out more at syseducation.org or by emailing info@syseducation.org. Set up your free consultation meeting to discuss how SYS might be able to help your school. I love what you said about listening being a really important part of communication, because you really have to hear the gray of what people are saying. You have to read between the lines a lot of the time and really get to the heart of what it is that they need. And there's a quote from Katie Novak, which popped into my head as you were talking. She says, "Firm goals, but flexible means."
Absolutely.
And that's what it sounds like you have been able to achieve. Like, this is our goal. This is our end game. Here's what we're doing. This is why. How we get there. Okay, I can be responsive to your needs. I can go slow if you want to go slow. We can go faster for those who are ready. I think that's really cool that as a school leader, you can encourage your principals and your other instructional coaches and that sort of thing to just support your staff in whatever step along the path they are. They're all on the path though, and that's what
That's right.
matters.
We all are.
That is so cool. Let's get into some specifics. You have done all of this, what I consider really brave work for the betterment of a school, for the benefit of students and teachers. What do you love about Oregon Charter Academy this year? What's different about your school now as compared to before? Is there something, a little like special sauce now that's going to make it more appealing to families and teachers alike? Are there new positives in this reimagined school?
It's really incredible that I don't get the phone calls from parents anymore as we previously did in our previous structure about this curriculum's terrible or there are mistakes in the curriculum and we all know it and we're working to get them fixed, but we couldn't fix them. We had to wait for other people to go through their processes, which often would take a year or two.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I love that I don't get those phone calls anymore. We're all human. We all make mistakes, but we can quickly adjust and like, oh my gosh, you're right. We need to rethink that and then put out a better product the very next day. So that's pretty awesome. That's honestly the biggest change. I love the staff that have really embraced this. I love all of our staff and they have all embraced this. I should be careful how I say that. They're doing great things and I love that we've been able to do this together and I recognize the work that they put in to put out the best product they can for their students every single day. And that's pretty incredible. I love that, in our former arrangement, we were a little bit limited on some of the programs we could run just because of the platforms and the outdated technology, things like that. So to be able to finally tap into these things that we've always wanted to do and continue to grow these programs, so I think about Ascend, which is our career technical education program. And we did have that started previously, but now all that our students can do within that program, we have 5 pathways. We're starting to build our 6th pathway, and every single one of those kids have the opportunity to graduate with an industry certification. That's pretty incredible.
Whoa.
Absolutely incredible. We've got just a lot going on. I don't want to give away too much, but it's all about what are the needs of our students? What are the needs of students around the state? And how can we support our staff in meeting those needs? And there's a lot more to come. And that's what's exciting is because we can plan those things and we can implement those things. And we know that we're going to be better for kids and better for staff as we are working forward.
That's awesome. And you're also an AVID school, is that right?
We sure are. AVID has been a great program for our school. I mean, the instructional strategies and AVID are, arguably just great instructional strategies. So just being able to then intentionally incorporate those into the classroom with all of our students. But then specifically our AVID students are pretty cool kids, and they love being part of the program and are proud of it. And it's exciting to see what the future holds for them as we're starting to get up into the upper high school levels now to see, okay, are you going to graduate? What's the right next step for you? Is it a career readiness? Is it a college? And, let us be your support into what that next step is. So it's pretty awesome.
That is really awesome. It's so cool to see an online school that offers so many different paths to post-secondary success. Like what is going to happen after graduation? Because there are just so many paths in real life. We know that. So to be able to help support kids in making those choices. If you could have the ideal online school world, what would that look like to you? What would online education, charters, whatever, what would that look like to you in the state of Oregon or maybe even nationally? How would you like to see kind of online schools become more just woven into the fabric of our
Well, I
educational
think you
community?
just answered it. That's it right there. I think a better understanding from those not involved in virtual education that might be involved in education or maybe might not be, that develop whatever preconceived ideas about what virtual education is without having true foundational knowledge of it. So I think just a better understanding. And I think that's certainly true for many in our state as well. And I'm sure nationwide. When you look at a grad rate at Oregon Charter Academy versus any local high school, well, let's not just talk about a number. Let's talk about the stories behind those numbers. And so being able to, in my ideal world, where everyone truly coming back to that listening piece, listen to what those stories are. Let's look at how many kids came to us credit deficient and did graduate on time, So I think that would be the ideal, is that there's a better understanding truly of the students we serve and how they are demonstrating success. And maybe success is they pass 0 classes at their local district and now they pass 2. They're still not on track to graduate, but I would say that's a success right there.
Absolutely.
Then building on that success. The other thing significantly and really specifically for Oregon is truly thinking about, right now in our state, not every parent is afforded the opportunity to have school choice for their students. Once districts hit that 3%, the law back that stemmed from that 2011 legislation and the rules built around it. So once districts have 3% of their students enrolled in virtual public charter schools outside of their district, they can deny students enrollment. And these districts have done a great job. During COVID and standing up their own programs, I just have a lot of respect for how quickly they went from here we are teaching and learning in our local districts to, instantly having to stand up a virtual program, and they built on that last year. So I have the utmost respect for that. But a lot of those virtual programs in districts are full. And with districts being at 3%, it really has created a geographical inequity in our state where depending on where you live is whether or not your parents have school choice for you as a student. So I think really recognizing the challenge that has created, and the truly based on your address depends on whether or not you have the opportunity for school choice. And we talk about equitable access for all of our students. I think that needs to be a conversation that goes along with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Equity and being able to access that choice. I mean, choice is such a big thing in the state of Oregon in general, independence and rights and our free choices in terms of educating. And it's very interesting when you think about the history of education, to think of how it used to be the family's responsibility. And then eventually more and more government, had control of that. And it just sort of feels like that pendulum is swinging a little bit more again. And yeah, whatever we can do to kind of educate the public about choice. And that word can be kind of triggering for some people in the field of education, but just what that actually means in reality. I really appreciate that you brought up the story about, students who come to online schools, which they often do it, especially at the high school level, significantly credit deficient. And to help these students gain skills and gain some new knowledge and pass a few classes, it might not look good on paper, but in that child's real life, it looks really good. And
Absolutely.
I wish there were a way that we could measure growth instead of just looking at a one-time score or an end goal at the end of every year. Did we meet this end goal? Well, what growth goals have we met? Because that's pretty amazing as well. And
Absolutely.
especially coming from the world of special education, I'm hypersensitive to that maybe, but I think that focusing on growth and focusing on those stories is really helpful because that is the meaning behind all of the numbers and all of the data you might see. So that's essential.
Fully agree.
The last question I have for you is one I am asking all of my guests. We all have that teacher we remember from when we were kids, and we always kind of hold that teacher in our hearts and in our minds as we work ourselves into the field of education. Do you have a favorite teacher from when you were a child?
I have to tell you, I was very blessed that I had great teachers overall. And again, it was every year I got done with a grade, it was like, oh, that's my favorite teacher. So I feel very fortunate. A few, though, Mr. Borison, my sophomore English teacher, who works at McNary High School, he was just phenomenal because as I clearly excelled in math and that math was my thing and I became a high school math teacher, he did a really good job making that language arts curriculum meaningful to everyone. And yeah, that he really had an impact.
Which is no small task.
No, he did such a great job. And then, gosh, again, there's so many, but my high school math teacher, Mr. Shannon at Salem Academy, he was just funny. And I like a good laugh. And I think I've carried over, when I became a teacher, some of those sassy remarks, lived on. So
I love it.
For better or for worse. No, Mr. Shannon was hilarious, and I just looked forward to going to his class every day.
That is awesome, and we're so thankful for those teachers. So thank you, Mr. Borison. Thank you, Mr. Shannon. We're so happy the work you did with that little Allison, so that now she is Executive Director, Allison Galvin.
I don't know about really little. I've been this size since I was like 10, Natalie. Jeez.
Younger Allison Galvin will say. That is awesome. I mean, those teachers, they really do. They shape who we become in little ways and big ways. And it's awesome that now they've had an impact on you, and now you can have an impact on so many more teachers and students
Definitely.
And families through your role. So thank you so much for the work you're doing in education, especially online education. Thank you for talking with me today. I really appreciated your time.
Pleasure was all mine, certainly.
If folks want to learn more about Oregon Charter Academy or they want to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to find you?
I always think our website is a good starting point. So www.oregoncharter.org. It's a great first stop to check us out, and there's ways to contact us via the website. So come find us.
Fantastic. I'm sure they will. Thank you so much, Allison. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of SYS Presents Adventures in Online Education. Special thanks to my guest today, Allison Galvin. Allison taught us the value of listening and being responsive to feedback as a leader. She shared her passion for helping students succeed and reminded us to consider the stories behind the numbers when we analyze how successful a school may be. Next week, I talk with Tom Schimmer, educator, author, and speaker about all things assessment. If you're looking for a fresh take on assessing, you'll want to listen to this one. If you liked what you heard today, please hit subscribe and give us a rating. On Twitter, you can follow me, Natalie Conway, at AOE Natalie, and the show at SYS Presents. If you're interested in finding out more about SYS education, head over to syseducation.org. This podcast would not be possible without our exceptional team at SYS Education, including our amazing sound engineers, Natalie Farrell and Matt Duran, and our producer, Bo Neal. Thanks for listening, and remember, we can learn new things.
listening.